Welcome to Hort Culture, where a group of extension professionals and plant people talk about the business, production, and joy of planting seeds and helping them grow. Join us as we explore the culture of horticulture.
Hello.
I
How are
know. I was
you?
like, "What?" I'm doing good. Today is the Jessica and Ray show, and we
It's
did
a
not have
horticulture
Alexis
agent
sliding
day,
in at 150 miles per hour. Yeah,
right?
so yeah,
Just
we can talk about whatever we want to
whatever you
talk
want.
about, Jessica. Yeah, and that's a good thing. But yeah, we are two of four. Normally, those of you guys that have listened before, there's more of us on here, but Brett and Alexis could not be with us. They may, I think, Jessica, they said something about they'll be recording an episode for next week, but
Yeah, it is
this week is just us.
crazy time of year, which is
It
like it's
is.
kind of odd because some people are like, "Wow, you're through your super busy season, right?" Because people think like the spring rush, but especially
No,
as Ray and I being agents in
county
counties,
based. Yeah.
um, this is now switched into like fair mode. So
Well,
we have
it's
like county. You just finished at county fair. I'm geared up
yes.
for county fair, and it's like a whole other busy season,
But
right?
it
So
is. It's a different kind of busy. And all the stuff that we were helping people plant and manage in the spring, that stuff's producing now and it's getting
hey, I was gonna
diseases
say, or
or
it's
it's
sick.
drying out or it's doing all the things. So not only are we working in the field and doing a lot of diagnostic work, but as Jessica just said, we're out here worrying about county fairs, and I think you're working state fair again this year, Jessica. Is that
Yeah,
right?
so yeah, our
So
county fair
yeah.
happens at the end of July, and then kinda there's like a week or so break, and then we roll right into state fair. So, but
Yeah.
I'm one of those weird people. I'm a weird agent, I will admit it. I enjoy county fair, but I do floral hall,
Yeah.
and it's not just all plants, there's a lot of other things in there too, but I really enjoy, seeing how excited everybody gets when they see
Yeah.
their items, and
I
it's
have
fun.
always enjoyed that, especially like the youth and adults. I mean, adults get excited about entries. We have, county fairs, youth and adult entries. But yeah, I enjoy county fair also. And, we have a, wonderful flower show and we always have, lots of entries on fruits and veggies and things. Not so much on certain items because we're kind of an early fair. I'd say you got a leg up on us there, Jessica, where your fair is
Mhm.
a couple weeks after ours. And that ours takes place. But, yeah, I always enjoy it. And is your floral hall air conditioned?
It is. So I'm really spoiled with that
Yeah.
it's air conditioned, so that makes it a
Yeah.
much nicer experience for everyone
Yeah.
involved, from judges to participants to us who spend hours and hours there.
Yeah.
But it what kinda like a little update on, I don't know, I think I talked about it before a long time ago, our play garden that we planted in our backyard this year, different
Oh,
from our
yeah.
production garden, and it kinda ties into the fair, where we just have a few things in there that we don't grow in our main big garden that my kids have been loving this summer, like growing onions, growing potatoes. Digging potatoes is like their new favorite thing, and they're like wanting to ask all the neighbors if they need help digging potatoes because they're all about it. But we kind of talked about some of those things that we might still have going. We might still have some green beans time the fair comes around. We definitely have lots of
Yeah.
sunflowers planted,
Oh,
but
yeah.
my kids wanting to enter those in the fair, right? They've never really entered like
Oh, that's
veggies
fun.
before, but now they might actually have a few veggies to
That they grew in their
yeah.
own garden space. Did that change when I know they've been around from day one on your all's farm? They've been around growing things and farming and all the things, that go along with that. But when they got their own garden space, did that sort of change? Like, did they take ownership of that like right away, or is it their space and they remind
Yes.
you of that? Yeah,
Yeah,
good.
they did, because, the other garden is more of a larger production garden, right? That one is going stuff's going to market,
Yeah.
with that one, and this one was fun because my kids love onions. They eat raw
Hmm.
onions. Our onions never are the biggest one we had maybe been the size of a baseball because they just got excited and could go out there and they'd pull them early,
Oh, yeah.
and that's fine because it's just their play
It's
garden,
their garden. Yeah.
and that's even my son said that, which is a great quote to me, was that, something had happened. We planted sweet potatoes out there, and like 2 of them kind of got fried, right? And they didn't do anything. But he was just like, "It's okay, Mom. It's just a play garden." And I'm just like, "You're right. It's just if we get stuff, we get stuff. If we don't, it's not the end of the world." But in our tiny little space, we have gotten a lot of potatoes and
I
green
was gonna
beans
say, it sounds
so
like you've
far,
done how long how
and
did they
onions.
wanna get out there and just dig the potatoes when they were tiny, like little tiny, or did they
They
were they
did
able to
it.
wait?
That'll probably be a problem next year because where this
Oh,
was their
yeah,
first
yeah,
year, they
yeah.
didn't really know, right?
Yeah, now they're
So
gonna be
we
out there checking every
didn't.
week, yeah.
Yeah, but then, like, once the first one, we dug that one up, they wanted to dig them up every day, and so we
Oh,
kinda
yeah.
had to stagger them, and a neighbor asked us, "How are you storing your potatoes?" And we didn't do that many, but if we already have plans to do double, next year. And I was like, "Well, we're not storing those because we eat them every time. We don't have any leftovers because we've been eating them instantly."
Yeah.
But we've
Well, that
been green beans, on the other hand,
I was gonna say
surplus.
with you guys where you guys, grow commercially and you grow personally, I don't know about you, but folks, locally here, they're like, "Oh, when we have garden stuff, we really have garden stuff." And we've talked about that on the podcast before. It's boom and bust. And right now
Mhm.
it's kinda booming. It seems like all the things are coming in, green beans to tomatoes, if everything went well. But I mean, what do you do with all this stuff? I know you guys personally consume a lot, you just said.
Right,
But how
right.
do you take care of all that? Do you guys like preserve a lot or can a lot?
Yeah, especially, we have a lot of blackberries that are coming in
Oh
right now,
man.
so my kids are just stained purple all the time. Um, but, like, making jams and stuff out of those, water bathing
Mhm.
those are easy.
Yeah.
Green beans, I tried something. It's not something new, I'm sure lots of people do it, but for us, I don't have a pressure canner at home or a way to really pressure can on my stove that I
Mhm.
have, so we ended up, picking a bunch of green beans, which has also been a fun experience of breaking green beans.
Oh,
They had
you
never.
grew green beans with strings.
Yeah. Oh, no, no strings.
Oh,
So,
no strings, just
yeah,
breaking.
just
Okay, in
breaking
my
them.
mind,
Yeah,
immediately when you said breaking green beans, I went back to, ye olden days when we actually had beans. We sit there and string them and then break them. So,
right.
okay, stringless. Okay,
Yeah,
that's not
so
so
they
bad.
just had fun breaking them, right? And we, froze them. So,
Yeah.
blanched them and put
Mhm.
them in freezer bags and froze them, and we'll see how they turn out, if it's the same as, when my mom used to can, like, 200,
Oh,
cans
yeah.
of green beans each year. So,
Yeah, mom used to, my family, we used to can a great deal as well, but we don't now. It seems like we freeze stuff. Like we'll cut up peppers and, we'll set them out after they're washed, like bell peppers and things. And it takes up a lot of freezer space to freeze them in a single layer. And then we put them in the bag so they maintain shape. We freeze as much as we can, but we certainly don't I guess can a lot. We don't have a pressure canner now. In fact, I'll have to admit that. But we have been making a lot of like garden, what I call goulash. It's just like squash and
yum.
tomatoes. I'll stick it in the biggest pan I've got and just let it reduce. Just cook it over
Right.
medium heat, reduce it, and then we'll throw that on pasta. And I throw a little brown sugar in there just to, blend it all together. But we eat a lot of garden goulash. It seems like if there's just random stuff sitting on the counter, we'll make that kind of a pasta sauce kind of
Hey,
concoction.
nothing wrong with that. I think
It's
we've
just
had
random.
squash and onions almost every night as a side dish.
Mhm.
It has a good chunk of butter in it.
Yes, butter,
Butter
butter
and,
will flavor everything together, yeah.
char them a little bit, and
Mhm.
you
Oh,
can't beat
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah. Roast them. We eat a lot of roasted vegetables and things like that, but, we get creative, we make friends with the neighbors. We are in a, subdivision, so not all of our neighbors have tomato plants. We give out tomato plants, Reed does in the spring usually, where we grow some transplants, but, we're pretty lucky that we can give away some tomatoes, but
Nice.
it seems like when we have tomatoes, a lot of other people have tomatoes too, depending on where they live. So at some point, there's just lots of tomatoes
Yeah.
everywhere
Yeah.
if things are
We're
going well.
on the verge of that, I feel
Yeah,
like.
yeah.
Like, that our tomatoes are all just so they're starting to get in that breaker stage, right?
Just
So it's
getting a
like
little
when they
color, just a
little
little
color on
color.
them,
Yeah.
so it's getting ready to be that time where,
and I've learned, and
Chicken
this is a
sandwiches. Mm.
oh gosh, yeah, don't even get me started. And that's how I size my tomatoes. They're like, what size of tomatoes do you grow, or what type do you grow? I'm like, any kind of beefsteak, not the beefsteak variety, referring just the beefsteak style to anything that will cover a bologna sandwich. That's my or a hamburger. That's how I size my tomatoes, as strictly just on size. I want one big slice. I don't want to fool with two slices. I want one big slice.
Right.
I
Yeah.
love it. Yeah, but yeah, tomatoes are doing pretty good right now. But they're just one of the crops that's coming in. So all this
Um,
stuff is rolling. It's
yeah.
rolling.
And
Um,
even, I mean, it's doing fairly well, surprisingly, with even all of our like we went from, at least in my area, we got close to like 6 inches of rain in
yeah,
like a
yeah,
24-hour period.
hmm
So a lot of rain to extreme heat like the next day.
yeah.
So it's been you
He
know, it's been tough on some of our vegetables out there in our
it,
gardens.
it has, and he can do strange things. Now we talked just a little bit earlier, and all this kind of depends on varieties and your sun exposure, whether you get morning sun, evening sun, or both. Preferably with the garden, you have full sun, but there's been a heat dome. I guess that, Jessica, that's what they're calling it the last few years. It seems to be a popular term, but we're under a heat dome where it's been nighttime temperatures, which is very important. Nighttime temperatures have been elevated along with daytime temperatures. And by daytime temperatures being elevated, I mean 90 plus degrees. And in the evenings or through the nighttime, that's 70, 75 degrees or greater.
Mhm.
So when you have those conditions, you can have issues in your home garden. And I've been getting some of those phone calls, and it's related to that. It seems like I'll pick on tomatoes for a minute. They're one of my favorite crops, but
They're
boy,
very dramatic.
they are tomatoes are kind of princesses in the garden a little bit. They're kind of prima donnas
Yeah.
in that
I
they
guess an
are
indicator
wonderful.
plant, right?
They
Like,
are, because there's so many conditions that can be related to high temperatures, from blossom end rot, which is not directly caused by high temperatures, but it certainly plays a factor. What yellow shoulders,
mhm,
uneven ripening, or my favorite, Jessica, I believe you and I, or maybe someone else, I forget who I was talking to the other day about. Maybe we were texting a group, but tomatoes not ripening. I've had several questions over the last 2 weeks with tomatoes just holding green for longer.
right.
And that's a condition, isn't it? That's related to heat.
The leaf roll, right? That their leaves start
Physiological
to
leaf roll.
yeah, and that's
Yeah.
all heat related that they start doing that, and often it has people really worried that it's a disease or herbicide damage that's occurred, but they do that when they're hot. It's very common to see in high tunnels and greenhouse
Yeah,
production.
we see that in high tunnels all the time with that. But the plants will otherwise look very clean top to bottom.
Mhm.
But you look healthy, good green color. But you'll see the leaves, cupping or rolling, and a lot of times that's just temperature related. But tomatoes do a lot of interesting things when the temperatures get really out of hand and kind of high temperatures, especially 90 degrees plus. But it does in some cases cause uneven ripening. Commercially, it's called yellow shoulders, where the lycopene in the plant doesn't form what I forget above 85, 90 degrees. Your
Right,
tomatoes just don't turn red. That's one of the things that we've been seeing some of. And also here lately, we have some home gardeners that like to sucker their plants. And I caution people not to aggressively sucker their plants too much, because your plants need to have adequate leaf cover to shade the fruit.
yeah.
And those home gardeners that maybe suckered their plants a little too aggressively, they didn't have good leaf cover. So, have you seen any sunscald much this
I've
year?
seen some sunscald. You bring that up, it's blackberry season right now
Mm-hmm.
as well, and with this last round of that heat dome that we had, there was a lot of blackberries I've noticed that have had some sun damage to the fruit, where they
Mm-hmm.
were I mean, they'll still be great for, those cobblers and jams and jellies and
Yeah.
everything, they just don't look as pretty, but
Yeah.
it's that sun exposure and that, intensity that caused them to burn a little bit. But I've seen it a few times on some tomatoes too, and especially those ones that were pruned a little too
Yeah.
hard. Like there's good intentions of I think people think they're going to avoid some foliar diseases maybe that way. Lots of good air movement, but just pruning at that very beginning is really all
Yeah.
you need, right?
I
See
usually
that
prune
leaf
it just
coverage is beneficial.
yeah, I usually just prune a couple levels up. I'll prune a couple times, a week and a half, 2 weeks apart or whatever, and then I'll
Mhm.
stop. I don't want to prune too high on the plant. But sunscald on crops like tomatoes and other crops like berries, some of that can also be related to the plant wilting during the day. If it's not getting adequate moisture, if a plant like a tomato plant wilts during the day, that automatically exposes the fruit to more sun, and that can cause rapid sun scald. So we've
Mhm.
just been seeing some of that. That's related kind of to that. But I've had it on blackberries, all kinds of berries before, especially those southern facing slopes. And depending on that's a cultivar difference too. If it doesn't have adequate leaf cover, you'll see more of that. Seems like on berries on
I've
those southern
s
slopes.
I've seen a lot of wilt that has occurred,
Hmm.
but again, we had a lot of rain, and then all of a sudden it got super hot.
Yeah.
So a lot of plants that were just kinda, like, wilting after, and I think, a good amount of them have, like, regulated themselves out, but,
Hmm.
um, making sure when people do water, uh to help
Hmm.
combat that, like watering deeply, we've talked a lot of times on here about mulching and how beneficial mulch
Mulch really
is,
helps. Yeah.
but we put, some straw down on our play garden, mostly because I was trying to fight the weeds also
Yeah.
in it, but we did a nice layer of mulch, and I think of straw, and that has really helped, regulate, keep that soil moisture, and prevent some of that wilting and some of those other things that can go along when you have these extreme heat swings.
Yeah, you'll have on certain varieties of tomato shoulder cracking. It's
Mhm.
that happens on melons and vine crops and crops like tomatoes. If the water's uneven, you have blossom end rot. We've touched bases on that on several times on the show, but uneven calcium dispersal in the plant, or the calcium's moving too fast through the leaves if it's really hot and the plant's trying to cool itself by letting moisture out. It's just that's a complex situation, but it's made much worse by high temperatures and uneven watering. But it has made such a huge difference. Mulching especially my raised beds and my container plants where I have tomatoes. The last couple of years, I started mulching those, and it reduces the need to, I still have to water just about every day when the tomatoes are producing in a container. They really pull a lot of water out of the container. That's fine, but it's cooled the soil, and that has helped even out the moisture. And my tomatoes have just been much better in containers the last couple of years, and it's all because I think mulching has cooled the soil and just evened out that moisture that
Right.
you just talked about. That's helped a bunch, and that works, of course, in ground too. It's kind of the same effect. So that's a big one. But the heat affects more crops than just tomatoes,
Yeah,
uh,
I
other
we were
crops too.
talking a little bit before, and this keeps popping up in my mind about cucurbits, right?
Hmm.
And how
Oh,
they can
yeah.
get real funky with the heat, and
Yeah.
what
It
keeps
hits them too.
yeah, so, you were sharing that, they end up they just don't produce fruit at
Yeah.
some point, but they also get off balance with male and female flowers, right? And it's a
Hmm.
ratio of is it more male flowers, I think, that come on?
I forget how it goes, if it's more males needed for a female or vice versa. But what I do remember is that a high heat really messes with the production of that ratio of male to female flowers. So that's a problem. But not only that, but if it gets hot enough, sterility of the pollen itself is an issue
Yeah.
in a lot of different crops. Tomatoes. I've seen it in corn. And someone reminded me, it was an entomologist the other day. They also said, "Oh yeah, by the way, yeah, we know in corn you may have uneven pollination as a result of temperature, and so you have kernels that don't fill out on the cob." But they said bees also, I guess you could shed some light on this, and it gets super hot. There's a point to where bees don't even pollinate as
Right.
efficiently. Is that it? And
Yeah,
that kind of hit me because I never thought about that
'cause
in respect to the temperature in home gardens. They said no, when it gets so hot, bees don't like it either. I was like,
exactly. So it's
oh,
kinda funny, like, it's like, if you're hot, they're hot too, right?
yeah.
Like, once it gets to
I'd
a
never
certain
thought about the
temperature,
bee angle.
exerting all that, energy flying
Mhm.
around in those temperatures. And if they don't have a good, bees and stuff drink more water than I think people, think about. If they don't have a great water source nearby or something, they're not going to exert all that energy going to those flowers. They're going to stay back at that hive, and we see them where they're bearding the hives to try to cool it down the best that they can. Yeah, so they reach a point. I also tell that to people a lot of times too, when you just mentioned all those crops that just kind of stop producing at a certain temperature, and it's like, hey, it's hot and miserable for us outside. It's also hot and miserable for the plants,
And
as well.
yeah,
Um,
and pollination, I mean, so important. And I guess I hadn't thought just as much about that because I always talk about pollen going sterile or bloom abortion. There's
mhm,
lots of crops like that we just talked about, like pumpkins and things, that if it gets real hot, the blooms will just fall off. But it's also about the bees.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's a combination of a lot of different things.
We also have currently, where a pumpkin was thrown out in the yard. We have a
Hmm.
pumpkin coming up, like, in the center of our yard that we have now chosen to just mow around, and it has started putting flowers up, but I'm pretty sure they are, like, all male because nothing else has happened yet,
You
but
don't
it
see
just
any little tiny
yeah, but
things.
it's just
Yeah,
started, when it's been really, really hot, so, but yeah, just a rogue pumpkin in the dead center of the yard that we are choosing to mow
yeah,
mow
and
around
if
now.
you see a lot of blooms, but yet no little
Yep,
swellings of the little beginnings of the tiny fruit at the base of that bloom, that you may be having some issues.
right, but it's also cool to, like, if you pay attention to it, to see, like, when you're watching the weather and stuff and see when those temperatures change, how you'll start to notice things of, like, you'll see that fruit development then.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah.
it's neat to, like, observe that as well happening. Um,
Yeah,
so
most garden crops, that's, the good news is we're talking about all these heat related issues from, green beans, which you talked a little bit about earlier, squash and zucchini, cucumbers, all these things with, pollination or bloom abortion. But the good news is that when the temperatures do cool down,
mhm,
most garden crops are pretty resilient. They will recover as long as they've been getting adequate moisture. When the temperatures in the evening, especially, start to drop, you'll see recovery. Now, I do warn people that if you see your garden crops going into the evening, a lot of crops you'll see some wilt during the day when it gets really hot. That's sort of normal as long as everything else is looking good. But if you go out in your garden the next morning and things are still wilted, you have to really start to consider watering. And I don't know about you, Jessica, but especially home gardeners, commercial, farms, of course, have their own water schedules. But for home gardeners, I really want them to take a hard look at watering. And the best time to do that, if it was a perfect scenario, is do that in the morning. If you see that you have a lot of wilt, do that in the morning. And that'll prepare that plant as well as possible to go through the heat of the day.
right. Morning time, I know this one is always, like, try to water at the base if you
Yeah.
can, because that's gonna, I always say, like, you can't avoid it when it rains, right? But just, water at the base is gonna help you in a long time, especially I think of tomatoes with, like, all those foliar diseases that we get that are often spread by moisture and water, movement. That's gonna help you go a long way that way, and make sure to water deeply, right? So if
Mhm.
you're just doing a little spritz, across the top of it, the top, layer of the soil might look like it's saturated, but if you actually dig down there, it might not have any, that water hasn't got to those roots at all.
Yeah.
And if you're watering deeply, you end up having, stronger roots, I guess you wanna say, right? Like, they're gonna seek out that water versus if you're watering just very shallow, they're not gonna put on as, deeper root system on there.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. It's almost like a confessional as we're talking here. Kind of crops that I'm personally like in my own little backyard garden, which does not get full sun exposure. It gets probably 60% of the sunlight that it needs. So usually, sunscald and things like that aren't a problem for me. But problems that I'm having right now, I guess I'm thinking, Jessica, in my own little play garden. It's not a commercial patch at all, but just for a home garden, home planting, is I've got lots of blooms on my squash. It's actually usually I'm covered up by squash this time of year. Zucchini, usually just covered up, but we've really got a tremendous amount of blooms. not very many zucchini. So I'm not just, that's not a problem I'm having right now. Typically it is. And I think that is temperature related. It's an heirloom variety, so I think it's more prone to that. And I kind of knew that, but I wanted to grow it because it was slightly more resistant to squash vine borer, slightly, not totally resistant. So I wanted to try that out. And it's not done great. My cucumbers, I have had some vine wilting. I've not been watering those as well as I should. And I've exposed some of those cucumbers to hot sun, and I'm getting those off flavors in cucumbers. You'll notice in certain crops, like a cucumber, I think that's some of the bitterness. We talked a lot
Right.
about like what
Yeah.
causes bitterness. That's happening. Not only that, but misshapen fruit and cucumbers. Sometimes you'll just get misshapen fruit. Like tomatoes, you'll have white core, hard flecks within the flesh when they start to ripen. Well, cucumbers, they'll get misshapen. So I'm seeing all of that right now on certain of my plants, but the bitterness also is somewhat related to temperature fluctuations and high temperatures. Have you had
Right.
anybody, that's asking
I
about any of that?
I can say that, like, with personally, with some of the cucumbers that we've been harvesting as well, that we were
Uh,
excited to try, and then we
yeah,
ate them, and I was like, "Oh, I I don't know
yeah,
about this." Um,
yeah.
and they've been a little more bitter than I would hope that they would be. Um, I know with our little garden, well, we've also planted some 2 little blueberries plants, and
Mhm.
they've been watered the whole time, but they are not happy. So they are just they're riding the struggle bus this summer, and we're just like, I think, containers for those guys maybe next year
Yeah,
if
maybe
they
easier to
survive.
modify the pH or just manage
Right,
them. But big
right,
containers for blueberries, and that's peat based, which is kind of is easier to acidify, it seems like.
right.
But yeah, that those guys in Central Kentucky, blueberries just struggle. We're blessed with limestone based soils, but not for blueberries.
Not for
That's
blueberries,
not good
they're
for
not
blueberries.
happy,
And
no
if you
matter.
acidify, you got to go back and reacidify the next year in most cases because that soil is always being buffered above
Right.
where blueberries like. So yeah, my own home garden, I've got some of these issues, and it's just what we see from time to time in Kentucky. And a lot of these varieties do help. Like I said, I choose varieties now unless I have a specific purpose. I choose varieties with good leaf cover. That's really important for berries. It's important for crops like tomatoes. Pruning makes a difference. Uh,
We talked
the
about green beans, how there's a
Yeah,
difference of, like, so
varieties make a
the varieties,
difference.
the bush beans, being able to provide more of that foliage coverage and,
Yeah, a couple
you
years
know.
ago, all of my green bean blossoms, and I don't see it a lot, but I do see it. Green beans, technically on paper, are more susceptible to really high temperatures than even vining crops. And I have had years where I'll have people call in, and I can trace it back to heat waves or heat domes that we've had here in Kentucky, or wherever you're at. If you're having high temperatures, beautiful vines, and I'll ask about the fertilizer, and we'll determine that they did not have excess nitrogen. And a lot of times I'll track that back to just high temperatures, and the blooms went sterile or blooms just drop. I went out
Mhm.
and looked, and blooms just fell off. I don't see that a lot. Some of the newer hybrids, Jessica and I were talking earlier, I think they're better about that. They shade themselves better, but there's just certain varieties that are more prone to that. So watch out for that.
Right.
If you have beautiful vines and have blooms that are falling off, it could be related to these high temperatures as well.
Something that, at least in our garden, is not quite ready yet, but it's approaching, and temperature and rains can really affect them, are the watermelons and cantaloupes.
Yeah.
Um, it'll either greatly work in your benefit, right? If it's dry and a hot, to sweeten them, helping them ripen, right?
Oh
Almost
yeah.
perfect. So you gotta beat it before, because the raccoons, groundhogs, surprisingly, deer and coyotes, if coyotes will even
Oh
eat
yeah.
like cantaloupes, get them, the day before they're ready. But the temperature, that's like one crop I feel like when you're ready for them to ripen, that's when it's like, all right, it's okay that it's really hot and dry,
I feel like I have more control with those crops. Are you now the ones you're talking about, Jessica, irrigated or
Yes, they're
non-irrigated?
irrigated.
If they're irrigated in horticulture, we're a little bit different breed in that commercially, if it's a dry season, we usually have irrigation of some sort, and that means fewer diseases and you have more control over your water schedule so that you don't have blowouts, cracking, or you can concentrate the flavors in some cases by
Mhm.
underwatering just a tad and kind of managing that. But when you have natural boom and bust cycles of rain, it sort of just blows all that out
Right.
of the water, doesn't it?
Yeah,
And
it
then you really start
literally
looking at
blows them
tomatoes
up.
and vine, yeah, literally blows them out. And you start, there's nothing worse than seeing the cracking or with cantaloupes, we've had some years where it's so hot you kind of cut them on. It's almost like they sour on the inside.
Right, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, you'll
they
get
become,
that.
like, too sweet, like, if that's
Yeah,
a
they
thing,
get
or
so
they
hot, you cut them
yeah,
open. I don't know if it's fermentation or what the exact effect of that is, but, yeah, the heat does strange things there. So, but normally that's not a problem, if that gives you more control, and you don't
right,
have to worry about diseases as much late
right, so
season.
that's, like, one benefit of it, right? For those crops,
Yeah.
at least,
For
but
those crops, 'cause
yeah,
they're irrigated any which way,
yeah,
and so it kinda works in your favor, so it's not always a bad thing, eh, commercially, but now I know for other field crops that are typically non-irrigated, field corn, soybeans, things like that, you just don't generally have that option here in Kentucky. You don't have a lot of irrigation options,
mhm,
for the most part, so that's a very bad thing. But on the horticulture side, not as much impacted by that, even though do have to water more, and that's gonna, create a certain cost. But I would rather have that than just, be at the mercy completely of the natural rain cycles, which seems to be getting more sporadic. I don't know if it's just me, but heavy rains and then it turns off hot and then it may not rain again for a while.
yeah,
That's tough. That's tough on our garden crops.
mhm,
It
for
is very
sure.
tough. But Jessica and I were going to mention like fall garden crops, but I think gardeners will come after us, Jessica. They will be upset. We're here telling them, oh, it's 100 degrees. Plant your fall crops.
It's
Get ready to
yeah.
plant those. I feel like a gardener may throw a ripe tomato at me or something if
It's
I tell them
it's
to plant something
weird.
now.
It's weird because, like, our potatoes in our little play garden are done, right? Like, we have, like, one more left to pull, but now we'll have a spot available, right, to plant something else in.
Yeah.
And so I was looking at one of our ID 128, our home vegetable gardening guide, and it has a nice little chart in there to see
Yeah.
what we can plant. And it's kinda weird, like, already thinking about that, but it's so true. Like, July is the month that
Yeah.
if you wanna get stuff in for the fall in reality, um, that's the time to do it. So
And you just have to pay more attention to the watering. A lot of times it is hot. It's hotter, so you do have to manage the moisture of newly planted, transplants. But there's just some crops. I was trying to think, Jessica, that are so much better, even with some light frost. They actually improve. Those fall crops are so much sweeter. I was thinking
it's
kale,
like
Brussels sprouts,
broccoli.
parsnips, carrots are amazing
Yeah,
in the fall. But there's just some crops that are better. But it's always been a hard sell for me telling people during July and August when a lot of these things go in the ground. It seems like if it's been a hot year, especially, gardeners like, no, don't talk to us about that. We're done. But
right,
commercially, that's more common that you're doing those succession crops.
right.
Do you guys
Yeah.
do much of that?
No.
Do you not? Okay, you're done. You got
We
other things to
well,
do. Okay.
we are in full tomato season, so
Yeah.
our tomatoes, we don't have the early stuff,
Yeah.
right? So I guess we're a later, getting tomatoes out, crew, and so our tomatoes are just all green still right
Yeah.
now. Like, they're
Yeah.
just now starting. So
Mine's the
we
same.
usually
Yeah.
don't have the space because we'll try to keep our tomatoes going as long as we can. So some, like, we've before have had them still coming on in September, so we're gonna try to keep those tomatoes alive and producing as long as possible until it gets really cold. So every year we talk about it. Like, we're gonna do that. We're
Yeah.
gonna, "Oh, yeah, let's plant some stuff for,
It
the
just
fall."
seems like,
And
yeah,
then
you're a
it's just
different
so
person once
busy.
fall comes. Yeah, you're a different
Yeah,
person than in the spring when you had all these aspirations. And I'm the same way. One thing I do as a home gardener, I've done for a long time, but when I sucker my first thing of tomatoes, I do my first round of suckering. I'll take the suckers, just stick them in moist potting soil, and that's how I clone the plants. You get about an 8-week jump. and I'll plant in succession using the suckers. But this year I was like, I don't know what it was. I just posted on Facebook and our neighborhood page and said, come get these plants. I had some beautiful transplants that I had started from suckers and I was going to replant those. Nope, gave them all away. I'm a different person now. I was like, this heat has got me
That's
in a
funny.
mood. So this is a year I didn't do those succession plantings. But yeah, commercially, those are really important. But it's sometimes a
Well,
hard sell.
we're planning though for the play garden to
Okay.
add some stuff.
Okay.
They've requested carrots.
Oh, I
So
do love fall carrots. I
try
mean,
to do
that's the
some
crop that
carrots. Haven't
yeah.
been very successful with carrots in the past, but
Yeah.
we're gonna try it and see if
Okay.
we can do it. Um, so yeah, they have that, and they also requested spinach, which was kind
Oh,
of
that's another
surprising,
good one. Yeah.
but
They
so
need to
we'll
grow some
see.
turnips. Turnips are a fun one in the fall.
Yeah, I don't
Is
know if we'll maybe we'd eat turnips, and I don't know if any of us eat, like, beets or anything like that, but trying to think of
yeah.
what we could they wanted to grow more onions, and they wanted to grow more potatoes, of course. They wanted, "Let's do more potatoes," and I'm like, "Well, we gotta wait for that," so
Yeah, maybe we'll wait. Yeah, some crops, I mean, we just mentioned a lot, like certain crops you just can't get a fall crop out of. Most tomatoes are long season enough. It'd be very difficult unless you had like you used suckers or something or did like an early girl. But yeah, like the vine crops, watermelons and things, they're
Mhm.
just so long season. Sweet potatoes are one of those you could probably never do that because they're a long season crop. But yeah, there's other crops in the home garden. They're actually, I much prefer them in the fall. But do I plant them now in the fall personally? I sure don't because
Yeah.
it's hot in the summer.
It's hot, there's more insect pressure too, that's the other
Yes.
thing. A lot of
Yeah.
times you have more issues with disease and insect just because their numbers are all built up, like, I suddenly with our little green bean patch, it is now full of stink bugs.
Yeah.
Full
Japanese beetles
of
yet, Jessica?
Yep. Oh,
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
I had
Yeah,
a
oh yeah.
huge Japanese beetle
Healthy
outbreak this year.
population.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But suddenly there's brown marmorated stink bugs
Yeah.
as babies, the ones that'll come in your house this fall,
And they do
they
not
are
good
out
things
and
to like
stormed.
tomatoes and stuff. I mean,
Right.
they do. You want to describe the damage that you'll see from that? We get a lot
Uh,
of people bringing those
yeah,
in
we call
and
it
wonder what it
it's
is.
on tomatoes, like stippling,
Yeah,
right? So they have like the piercing sucking mouth part, so think of it like as a needle, right? That they are stabbing into, like, the tomato, and they make little, yellow spots.
yeah,
Almost looks like, little yellow stars or something that are all, like, grouped together. And same thing with, like, corn. They'll feed on the corn through the shuck, and they, will feed on individual kernels, and they'll often turn, like, brownish color.
yeah.
Um, they feed on the green beans as well, and
Hmm.
it just makes it, like, kind of, like, corey, like,
Rough coated or
rough,
whatever. Yeah,
yeah.
corky. Yeah,
Corky, yeah. So, but they are out in storm now. As we continue on with summer, there are a lot of insect pests that I'm starting to see. Their numbers are really starting to build up that I didn't even see, like, a few weeks ago. But that's just,
mhm.
their natural cycle as they go through the growing season.
Yeah. But once again, we've talked about all the things that can go wrong, especially with the heat. But even with saying all that, I'm getting garden stuff, and it sounds like
Yeah,
you are
we're
too,
having
Jessica.
fun.
So we don't
Yeah.
want to be such a downer here
No.
because you can manage all of this, especially through, mulching and timing your watering. And in some cases, I've seen home gardeners use shade cloth in their home
Yeah.
gardens to great effect, and it's amazing. And you can buy shade cloth in different weights to get the perfect. I mean, it's amazing what you can do, and I've
And
seen
you could
some do
do
that.
something so simple as I've known people who've, like, taken one of those big umbrellas that they
Oh,
use for, like,
yeah.
a table, a lawn chair set,
Yeah.
and they, like, stick it out in their garden to cover and shade, like, lettuces or different things
Mhm.
that need a little more shade.
Yeah.
And then just, like, planting wise, right? Like, we have a little bit of our sweet corn, we have a little bit of our purple sweet corn we're growing,
Mhm.
in our play garden, and thinking about that, how the sun hits in the afternoon,
Planting initially.
it's providing shade to the crop next to it, so you can do
Yeah.
different things like that to help, prevent some of
Oh, and that
these
makes a
from
huge
happening.
difference, a little
Yeah.
bit of evening shade, and you do that intentionally, and corn's a great example that you can use that shade and be very intentional about it with certain
Mhm.
crops, and the crops are way better.
Yeah.
If they get morning sun but afternoon shade, that really works in favor of certain garden crops. So you can kind of take advantage of some of those tall crops
Mm-hmm.
and kind of utilize that. But yeah, not to discourage anyone. Gardens are still gardening. Gardens are still producing.
They're
But
fun.
the heat is its own challenge. And if you do notice your garden crops doing something kind of different or weird, or you notice those star-shaped yellow spots all over your tomatoes, bring those in to one of your local county extension offices and talk with the good folks there, because heat can bring about its own challenges. But for certain crops, we talked about certain vine crops, they kind of love it. Once they start growing, get the fruit on there, it can, actually work in your favor. So all is not lost. It seems
That's
like,
right.
I mean, despite all of these things, most of us as home gardeners or commercial gardeners, horticulture folks, we bring in a crop each and every year. So got to end on a positive note, huh?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it should be a fun experience.
Oh
And if
yeah.
you lose some plants, that's okay. Everybody
Yeah.
does. Even the
Yeah.
most experienced people do.
I just
So,
plant some extra. And once again, we were talking about the garden bounty, and that can be a frustration point all in its own, I guess, Jessica,
right,
when
yeah.
everything comes in at once. I'm talking about all of these problems
So much
that I'm
squash.
having. But yeah, so my squash this year is one thing, but I am looking at you green tomatoes on my vine, and I planted a lot of heirlooms this year. So I'm going to have, if everything goes well, I should have a good crop of heirlooms, but they're green right now. They're long season heirlooms, but I look forward to having those guys here soon. And I'm watching them. And as soon as they go into breaker stage, the best thing I can tell people is that if you're experiencing any kind of sun scald or problems on a crop like tomatoes, pick those early
Mhm.
and just set those. I just set them on the counter in the kitchen out of direct sunlight, and they ripen beautifully. Uh,
Especially those heirlooms,
oh,
'cause
yeah,
they
the
are
heirlooms
just some of
doesn't
them are so
mind.
fragile, so just get them
That's a great
early.
point. Yeah, and they're long season and they're more prone to some problems with the sun
Yeah.
and things. But yeah, as soon as they start to pink up, I get those off the vine and harvest those, and they're just fine. That's one of my tricks that I do at home. So
Very
alrighty, I
cool.
think that just about wraps us up, Jessica. Well, thank you for joining Jessica and I. As we mentioned earlier, I think Brett and Alexis will be on the next episode. We're all just trying to make it through summer right now, but in the near future, the whole podcast crew will be back together. But we thank you for joining us today. And if you want to reach out to us, you can always look down in the show notes. All of our contact information is there, and we'll link up some publications that deal directly with managing kind of your garden crops as it relates to heat, and any other links like that. We always put those in the show notes. But thank you guys so much. We'll see you next week. Thank you.